All right, everyone. Welcome to the Art of Masculinity. We have a special guest for you today. Actually, all my guests are special. I love them, but this is one that I've fallen in love with this guy on my own because he is just a powerful human and just so much knowledge that he brings to the table. Stefanos, Sifandos, man, what's going on, brother?
Man, it's a pleasure to be here and just speaking with you before. I'm just amped up for this conversation. I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm excited.
I'm excited, man. I was listening to you with Josh Trent and where you guys just took it. It was just, it's probably one of the most beautiful conversations I've seen two men have in a long time.
So good, man. I'm glad that you got something from it.
Oh, absolutely, brother. Well, I want to get my get to know you questions out of the way because I just want you
Yeah,
to start brain dumping to us. But
yeah.
uh, the first thing I got for you, man, is what is your spirit animal and why?
I love that. I'm going to have to say I've done various journeys before in my past, and so I like totem animal journeys and shamanic journeys, and the grey wolf comes up a lot. And so it's
Ah,
interesting because we were talking about alpha males and so forth. We'll talk about that later. But the grey wolf comes up a lot for me. And I'm going to be cheeky and I'm going to go an extra. I'm going to say the eagle as well because, man, ever since I've been a young kid, I've always wanted to fly. I'm always having dreams about flying, whether it be through the cosmos, literally through planets, or whether it just be over my suburb. I have that feeling of just flying all the time. And so to be an eagle and have that bird's eye perspective of life would be just epic. And so that feeling of being floating, and I associate flying with freedom. And so, as you know, for most men, most people, one of our primary drives, whether it's unconscious or conscious, is freedom. For me,
mhm.
that's been a big part in my life, a big word in my life, freedom. And so the bird represents that, and the wolf, just man, the elegance, the intelligence, the posturing of a wolf. I mean, the fact that a wolf can be on its own if it needs to, and also works extremely well in a pack. I mean, I
Mm.
love I love what that represents.
Oh, that's awesome. I can almost imagine you as like a flying gray wolf, right? So let's like combine this. You're like the
Why
eagle.
not?
You're like the eagle wolf. That's what you are.
I'm all over that. I love that. I'll
I
take that.
That's good, man. And I picture like you act, I can see that in you. It's almost like it emanates from you, which is really cool because I'm just
Thanks.
like when you said that, I was like, I can see him as some badass gray wolf. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I love the wolf, man. I love animals. Full stop. To be honest. Yeah.
I do too, man.
Yeah.
So the next question I got for you is if you were a DJ, what would your DJ name be?
I've never this fucking epic. I've never been asked this question before. Oh man.
There's no wrong answer.
Yeah, no. DJ Cosmic with a K,
Ooh.
not with a C. DJ Cosmic with a K. Yeah,
I like it, man. I'm very much a huge fan of the Cosmos, so I can
yeah,
definitely support that one. That's good.
yeah. I love that.
All right, so what is something that everyone looks stupid doing?
Oh, man, here's a good one. Everyone really looks stupid being angry and hyper aggressive and lost in their temper. And the reason,
Oh,
yeah,
so good.
the reason I say that is because I spend so much of my life being angry, and I look back at those moments from a different thought space and mental perspective now, and I think, oh, I looked ignorant, I looked ugly, I just, yeah,
I 100% support that. I look like a dumbass when I'm angry. Like I can look back at that every time, just like you, just be like, wow, okay.
yep,
That's
yeah,
a good one. I like that.
out of
All right.
control, man, out of most of my aggression has never been. Some of it has, of course, very directed, only in my later years, but most of the time it was just uncontrolled aggression, immature, ignorant,
Mm.
no mastery of self in that moment, zero.
Yeah, there's a whole different dynamic to it when you have that control and when it's just out of control, pure emotion,
Yeah,
aggression.
yeah,
We're gonna get into that because I love that. I love what you
yeah.
have to say about that. That's a really cool thing. So, um, the last one I have for you is if animals could talk, which would be the rudest?
I think the alligator or the crocodile would be the rudest because I think they would be very witty and very sarcastic and very, I don't give a fuck. And if you fuck with me, I'm going to eat you. And they would be very rude in there. And they've been around for hundreds of millions of years, right? So they've got this entitlement, this chip on their shoulder. That'd be rude. Yeah.
The entitlement.
Yeah.
I love that. They're like,
this place.
Yeah, they're like, say something smart. 2,500 pounds of pressure's coming down on your ass. Oh, that's so good. I like that.
I've been around for 400 million years. Tell me something you don't know.
Yeah, bring it on, bro. Yeah, I love that. All right, man. Well, we're getting out of that. So we got to know Steph on that one. So again, I've done my research on you, and I was listening to the podcast with Josh Trent, and one of the things I think you just have a beautiful, beautiful aspect on is masculinity in itself. So what is it? What do you kind of have to say about masculinity in today's society and this kind of shift that we're seeing?
Yeah, I think I honestly, man, I'm going to approach this in a couple of different ways. I have a great deal to say on masculinity, and no one knows what masculinity in contemporary times really is today. I shouldn't say nobody knows. It's in such deep contention. And so I don't claim to know everything. I present a version of what masculinity can be in contemporary times.
Yeah.
And what I think we're missing, what the general narrative around masculinity is missing, is that we're very quick to say, well, what does it mean to be a good man? And of course, I'm going to prelude this for a moment. First of all, masculinity is an expressive state that resides within every human being. In fact, you could even say it resides within every sentient being. And the polar opposite to that is femininity, or the feminine expression. And so all it is two sides of the same coin. Same coin, two different sides, two different expressions. And so we need that because we live in a dualistic world. We live in a world of polarity, right? And so there's a balance point there. But for simplicity's sake, we'll talk about men, we'll talk about masculinity, and we'll talk about masculinity in reference to men, just for simplicity's sake, because I think that's where we sort of want to go anyway.
Yeah.
And so what we're saying is, the narrative is saying, well, what does it mean to be a good man? What does it mean to be a good man? And that's all good and well. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. And there's more to it than just being a good man, because that's culturally relative. That's subjective. What about the question of what does it mean to be good at being a man? Different question.
That's
Different
powerful.
question.
I love that.
Very, very powerful when we ask it from two different perspectives. And so being a good man is culturally relative and subjective. Yeah. In other words, I'll give you an example that's somewhat potentially relative to the audience as well. But I use this example all the time. It's an extreme example, but it can make a lot of sense if we really dig deep into it. You don't even have to go that deep. It's actually really on the surface. You have a suicide bomber, as an example. Goes in, does what he does. His in-group, his people that he's a part of, his group, his in-group, his immediate peer group, primary peer group, sees him as a hero, sees him as courageous, sees him as a man of God, sees him as divine. We in the Western world would see him as cowardice, would see him as weak, would see him as not being a real man, would see him as being hyper-aggressive. So you can see two different groups view the same action, the same person in a completely different way. That there is the difference of what does it mean to be a good man. It really is culturally relative, and it's I want to say peer group relative as well. So I'm not saying let's not define what it means to be a good man. Let's not list virtues and characteristics. Of course we do. I'm not saying, hey, because it's culturally relative, I'm not going to tell you what it means to be a good man. I have my opinion and my belief of what it means to be a good man based on my upbringing, based on my interpretation of the world, based on the way I see the world, based on the way I think man can be and could be better or more effective or more efficient based on a set of premises that drive that behavior. Sure, I can give you that opinion, and I will. We'll go into that. But we have to understand that there's going to be differing opinions on it. So I can say, hey, being a discerning man is really important. Someone else might say, I don't give a fuck about discernment. I don't care about that. It doesn't make me a man. It can happen, right? You can have a man that says the same, that actually says that. So we have to just be clear on that. So we'll go into that. But I want to speak a little bit to being good at being a man. And so there's a cool author, Jack Donovan, and he speaks a lot to this. He speaks to what it takes to be a good man, or sorry, rather what it takes to being good at being a man. And so he uses, there's 4 principles and there's one that ties them up. And so there's strength, courage, mastery, and honor. Honor ties all of those together. So what he's saying is that when you exhibit strength, courage, and mastery within a group of men, within a group of brothers that share similar values, you're able then to express honor. And essentially, that's a big part of what it means to be good at being a man. And I'll elaborate a little bit on it and help us there. And so the way I interpret that, and I add my spin on it as well, because it's not just evolution and biology. So essentially, when we're looking at what does it mean to be good at being a man, we're looking at the evolutionary aspects, the physiological and biological aspects of what it means to be a man and how we've evolved through time. So the last 500,000 or 2.5 million years. I think it's about 2.5, maybe it could be 3.2. I can't remember. We're humanoids.
Carbon dating's a little bit off. So
yeah. Well, yeah. It could be whatever it is. Call it 1 million years. It doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah.
This conversation doesn't matter too much. And so we're looking at what we did to function as a tribe of men. And so when we look at history from that perspective, from what we understand, we see that men spent a lot of time with each other. Number one. And so having a brotherhood with you, where you can get real feedback from that helps you form your identity of self and your self-worth and your place in the world, is also part of being good at being a man. This thing of strength, man, we're born to move the body. Like I say to people, this is what I say. This is really simple, and I get laughed at this, but I'm being dead serious. You're going to find yourself a band of brothers that if the zombie apocalypse came tomorrow, they're not far from you, and you can go there and you can do what you need to do to survive. Because we function best when we're in groups. We really do. We're pro-social beings. You've been in the military, bro. You know.
Yeah.
You know how special forces operate.
Yeah.
They operate in set numbers when they go for any particular mission, right? There's a reason for that. There's science behind that. It's not just science. You're in a formation for a reason, because it's effective. Now, there might be differing opinion on what that looks like, but there's some fundamental principles to it. You just tell me if you know better than me.
No,
correct?
brother. Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
Okay.
Nope, that is exactly right.
So there's a reason for that. And so men need to be physically strong. We have to carry physical prowess. And the way I see that is that you don't have to be a bodybuilder. You don't have to be a powerlifter. You don't have to be the strongest man in the world. You don't have to be the best fighter in the world. It's got nothing to do with that. It's not about being the best. It's about being adept and ready. Physical preparedness and readiness. That's it. So whatever that looks like for you, make sure you're equipped in that area. Make sure you have a skill expression, agility, in coordination, in strength production, in power production, in endurance. Like if you said to me, Steph, you need to, your fiance's life depends on it. You need to go run 100 miles right now. And I've never run 100 miles in my life, but let me tell you something. I carry the confidence in my prowess and my adeptness that I would give it a fucking good go. I'm not like, oh, well, I'm not going to do that, so everyone's going to die. No? I'm in. I'm fucking all in. Even if my feet are blistered and bloodied, I'm in.
Yeah.
Because I have an experience of what it means to challenge my physical body. And I continue to do that. So challenge is a major part of that strength component. And that leads into courage as well. We're here because we've stood on the shoulders of giants. And I'm not just talking about intellectual giants, cognitive giants. I'm talking about our ancestors from hundreds of thousands of years ago who chose to venture out of the cave and explore and kept on dying, and the strong would survive. Those that were courageous enough to explore their world, the unknown, were the ones that survived. And we carry those genes, but also that social practice in our world today. It's a disservice when we are meek in the world, when we are weak and passive in the world. It's a disservice to our own masculinity when we're being that person. That's not, I remember in my life, man, I spent so much of my childhood being weak and being passive and not speaking my truth. And I was dishonoring my maleness. Now, I'm not talking about being hyper aggressive and being controlling and autocratic or any of that. I'm talking about coming from a place of truth and venturing into the unknown. And it wasn't, honestly, man, I did a lot of venturing into the unknown in my 20s and so forth, but it just wasn't with substance. It wasn't until I hit my 30s that I really started venturing into the unknown, and I started cultivating this muscle of courage. I'm talking about spiritual courage, emotional courage, physical courage, all of that. And started really practicing what it meant to move through fear, not to bypass fear and isolate it and pretend it doesn't exist and to be paralyzed by it and not move, but to actually go through it and learn and then be reflective, be critically reflective on what it is that I'm experiencing right now. What is it that I'm learning? How can I grow from it? How can I be a more effective, efficient, proficient man in the world for myself and for others? And then we come to mastery, literally just mastering skills. Men and women back then, human beings, had nothing. They didn't have the high level cognitive intelligence and access to technology that we have today. We've become complacent and fucking lazy today, especially as men. Most of us just sit down like this for 12 hours a day, right? How's that help us? How's that honoring our physiology? It doesn't. How does that honor our masculinity in terms of when we're active in the world, when we're exhibiting courage, when we're practicing new skills, learning, maybe it's bow and arrow stuff, maybe it's just learning how to make some furniture, maybe it's fucking knitting, I don't know, whatever. Maybe it's being automotive, mechanical, engineering type things. A new skill, whenever we're mastering something, becoming really proficient at it, we're stimulating the brain in a very particular way. But what we're also doing when we combine mastery with courage and the practice of strength as well, we're honoring our maleness by allowing our bodies to release a concoction of hormones and neurochemicals in the body that is very specific to us as men. Mm-hmm. When we're complacent and when we're sedentary, we don't get that. And so what are we actually being? I don't want to say we're being hyper-feminized, because that's not necessarily accurate. And it's got nothing to do with women or that saying, oh, men are too feminine and therefore that's wrong. Not at all. Mm-hmm. In fact, I feel the new paradigm, a new model of masculinity requires an element of femininity for men to actually have access to have a greater access to the spectrum of emotions and deliverable states of being and expressive states, because our consciousness has also raised and has also changed massively and transformed over the last million years too. So we have to take that into account. And so this question of, I know I'm saying a lot here, so I'll stop in a moment.
You're good, brother. This is good.
But this notion of being good at being a man is based on those four elements. And so the honor piece ties in, is that if you are being that man in a group of men, and I'm not insinuating that we go, brother, you would definitely understand this from the work that you've done or the experiences that you've had. I know you're really getting this. And so the honor piece comes in the identity that's reflected back on us and the way we're challenged and brought the best of us brought forward and forth in that survival state. Because here's the tricky bit, is that I'm not necessarily insinuating to all men, go out and go with another three men and plonk yourself in the middle of the thickest jungle, the Panama jungle in the world, naked and with no water and no supplies, and get yourself out because you need to challenge yourself in order to feel like a man. Although you could do that and that would help.
Build some confidence.
Definitely. What I'm saying is learn to embrace challenge. Mm-hmm. Learn to even seek challenge with other brothers where you can get real feedback that helps contribute to your sense of self, because there is value in doing that. And you can be creative in what that looks like. And maybe it is going on a hunting trip or a camping trip or something along those lines. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's getting together and creating a force to be reckoned with in the business world. But again, a force to be reckoned with in a healthy way that is considerate of others too. And this is where it gets tricky, man, because there's a line to that. I mean, where we are now in terms of our collective consciousness, not to go on too much of a tangent, is that this utopian notion of universal consciousness and this utopian notion of unity consciousness and being all connected and being all one, it's a delusion where we are now. It's not going to work. Then the masculine is very good at creating conflict to be challenged because that's its natural state. And the feminine is very proficient at keeping peace or creating peace and then keeping peace. And so we're moving into more of a feminine state of being at a collective level now. We see that in our governmental institutions. We see that in the way consumerism is rampant in the world. We see the universal constructivism that's occurring in our world. And these are deeper geopolitical conversations, right?
Yeah.
But we're seeing this happen in the world. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It would be a bad thing if we went extreme feminism.
Yeah.
Or feminine expression. That's not going to be healthy because it's extreme.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity now to bring balance into that and say, well, what type of man and woman do we want? Assuming there's just binary gender, two genders, what type of man and woman do we want to be? And that's the big question now. And so then we come to being a good man. We are talking about virtues that inherently are not all of them, but part of them are feminine expressions, such as compassion and empathy. I think it serves men to carry compassion and empathy. And that's a natural feeling that we have. I mean, when men move into a protector role, there's a number of reasons why they move into a protector role. And one of them is because they sincerely care about what they're protecting, if it was human beings particularly. Most men, unless they have a pathology and they're completely stuck in their ego, so therefore they're egocentric, and they have a PD, like a form of personality disorder, whether it be NPD, like a narcissistic personality disorder, or another form of bipolar, whatever it may be. Unless they have a pathology in the brain, in the mind, men are going to, I'll use protection as an example, they care about what they're protecting. It's not just how good to protect it because it's mine and I have ownership of it. It's also, I care about this. I care about this family unit. I care about this community. I care about what I'm quote unquote fighting for. So I've dropped a shit ton of information there. So I'll stop there.
That's beautiful, man. I love it. And you actually hit a couple subjects that are just really key, I think, for males nowadays. Not just normal males, but alpha males. I think in my opinion, alpha males, one of the things that you touched on was adventuring into the unknown, which I love, because a lot of times what I think alpha males do, and a lot of men in general, women I don't feel are so much ingrained in this, but men have a hard time with it, is adventuring into the unknown because they're scared of failure. And because we're supposed to, quote unquote, know everything, we're supposed to, quote unquote, be good at everything. As soon as we gain this cognizance of we're a man and we're supposed to, the guy that won't look at the instructions, right, to build something, right? Yeah. We're supposed to know everything. But then he fucks it up and builds it wrong. He's like, God damn it. Now I got to go look at the instructions. But that's the thing, is I think that we're, as men, we have this ego where we're scared of failure. And so when we get to a point in our lives where we stop adventuring into the unknown because we're afraid of failing, we're afraid of falling, and we're afraid of embarrassing ourselves. Yeah, humiliation's a major fear. And we're also afraid of being ridiculed. And this is the fluidity of where masculinity is today. And I use the term fluidity purposefully because it's a feminine term, is that men don't know who the fuck they are. Right. They're told, hey, don't be this, don't do that. And then so it's like, oh, I'm scared to be myself because what does that mean? I'm going to get ridiculed. I'm going to get rejected. I'm going to get abandoned. I'm going to get humiliated. And so we're seeing that more and more men are becoming passive. And the reality is women don't want that. Women do not want that. They don't want passive men. It's not, for lack of a better term, natural. They don't want meek men that are hiding away and being weak and are indecisive and not able to take leadership and sovereignty of their own being, not able to be discerning and not able to make decisions. There's some insight into what I think about what it means to be a good man as well, to have strong, healthy, masculine traits. Well, go ahead. Go on. No, please go. I was going to say, like, what you're leading into right there is a lot of also control over your own emotions. So if you're, in my opinion, like that actual good man, or you're that truly an alpha man, you're actually going to have control of your emotions because you're going to be able to confront your emotions, right?
Yeah. So if you're a healthy man, a healthy human being has access to a spectrum of their emotions. So they can be angry and experience anger and channel it in a healthy way to equilibrate and neutralize it so it doesn't remain stagnant in their body. It doesn't become a trauma effect, and that then doesn't drive them unconsciously for the rest of their lives. A healthy man can express sadness if he needs to, and he knows how to. So one of the key characteristics that I hold within what I call as being a healthy man is vertical vulnerability. And so it's not just being vulnerable, like just think of like a machine gun, like a splatter gun approach of vulnerability. I'm just going to cry and be angry and be happy and just to everyone and everything. And I'm not going to care who's in front of me. There's got to be some verticality, some continence around that. In other words, we've gone to ourselves first is another thing, another characteristic for me, self-reliance. Being a self-reliant man, coming to ourselves first, being with the emotion or the pain or the fear that we're experiencing, understanding it, spending some time with it ourselves first is so important, because then we're not just vomiting it out to the world. If we're going to be vulnerable with someone, we know who to be vulnerable with. We know how to be vulnerable. And this isn't being fake or putting a facade on it. It means that we've spent some time with this pain, that we have connected to it at a deeper level. We've understood it at a deeper level. And so when we are vulnerable with it and we're sharing it and we're being open and raw, we're not triggered by anything, any future projections or any past pains that are being infiltrated into this present moment and then amplifying the pain that we're experiencing more than what it needs to be, because we've settled it within ourselves. We've spent some time with ourselves. Then we go and maybe we speak to a brother and say, man, I'm struggling with this, and this is what I've come to so far. I was really peaked in my emotion, but I managed to do some practice around breath work. I did some movement. I was deliberate in some, whatever I did, whatever practices I did, some journal writing or some reflective practice. And I feel better about it, and it's still bugging me. Man, you know, we think that that journal writing is this airy-fairy, spiritual, feminine thing.
Yep.
So, okay, fantastic. Tell that to Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoics that ever existed, one of the greatest fucking warriors of our time.
Yeah.
Right? Like, not only did he journal ridiculous amounts, he philosophized massively through that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, some of the greatest Stoics of our time, and Stoicism is a beautiful, it's a beautiful philosophy. It's a beautiful Zeno, another one. I mean, he from Athens, from Greece, but there's what's his name? Seneca. I mean, man, you know, we're talking about warriors, kings, leaders that engaged in journaling and being reflective. At the end of each day, they ask themselves, could I have been a better human being? Did I do well enough? Did I feel fully? What was my mindset like? How did I face challenge and fear? And not only, just as a side note, journaling is tremendous for left-right hemispherical brain integration and vertical brain integration. In other words, it makes us more intelligent.
Did not know that.
Yeah, and from a place of perspective, it helps us see the world differently, which gives us a different feeling in response to what we're experiencing. So in other words, if we're experiencing anger or sadness or disharmony, by journaling, we can get perspective on what we're writing and see our circumstances differently, so we can feel different. So therefore, our level of wellness and well-being is differently experienced. Another example of what it means to be a healthy man. And so vertical vulnerability, being powerful in that posture, that's very important for men as well. Again, self-reliance, vertical vulnerability, key characteristics of what it means to be a healthy man in today's times, and integrating self-compassion and self-love into that, respecting ourselves, having an opportunity to see ourselves for the value that we bring to the world. Very few men do that, man. Yeah. Very few men believe in who they are and actually believe in their skills. And if they do, they believe in it in an arrogant way that hurts others too much. It's too exclusive.
That's freaking awesome. And so when you talk about that, respecting yourself, I know you're real big on this and honoring yourself. How important is it for guys to really not only respect and honor themselves, but then respect and honor their significant other?
For me, man, it's everything, because I've come from a place where I didn't. I come from a place of pretty much every relationship I had, I was unfaithful in that relationship. High levels of infidelity, man. High levels. This is previous to going back throughout the years, right?
Yeah.
And it was bravado, and it was ego, and it was also fear. My actions were driven by unconscious, unchecked fears that I had, and trauma that I hadn't processed as a kid. I grew up in a very violent household, physically and emotionally abusive, very volatile. And so when I said to you I was very meek and weak and passive as a kid, when I hit my teens, 15, 16, I started being very outwardly aggressive, man. Fighting every weekend, alcoholism, just the opposite of that, because I had so much repressed anger and repressed frustration and repressed experiences of not being seen and not being respected and understood. And I didn't know what to do with that. So I just went out and I punched on and I got angry and I did what I thought men were meant to do.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. And then I stopped drinking alcohol because I respected my body too much and I was really into health and fitness, but I was still so aggressive. I was still so angry and frustrated and agitated. And it wasn't until I did deeper into work and really moved through those painful experiences and went into the unknown chasms of my own psyche. You see, here's an interesting thing, brother. I mentioned this earlier to you. I've worked with military men quite a fair amount, particularly special forces guys.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can't give them. There's nothing that I've worked with them mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. There's no physical challenge I can't give them that I would also do with them, because that's usually what I would do.
Yeah.
Whenever I give any of my athletes, when I was working with elite athletes and so forth and fighters and that, I would do what they would do because I want to experience it so they can't say, oh, this hurt, it doesn't hurt. I know exactly what's going on.
Yeah. And
there's nothing I could give a military man that would physically break him. It would break him, but he'd just keep going. Keep going. Just animals, man. Just weapons. Just so. But when we started, when it was post tour, and they've been broken during that tour, and they've experienced what they've experienced, and they've had the hardships, and they've witnessed what they've witnessed, going into the emotional stuff, man, that was tough. And so many initially, for quite some time, were so unwilling to go into the unknown chasms of their own psyche and their own emotional being. Yeah. You put them in a war zone, they're in. Yeah. Conditioned. Familiar. Yeah. What's unfamiliar is scary.
Yep. And it's easy to shut down like that cognitive ability and focus on reaction than it is to actually think intellectually about your own emotions, and so getting deep with yourself is something that I think it's pivotal for men to do in today's age. Like, absolutely, especially the guys presenting themselves as alpha males. If you can't get real with yourself, if you can't be solitary with yourself, how are you going to be effective to everybody else out there?
I agree, man. I think that's a human thing as well. It's being in touch with all aspects of ourselves. We know that men have a limbic system. We know it. Everyone in their brain has a limbic system that governs emotional regulation to some extent. That's responsible for that. Men aren't. They haven't had a lobotomy. Not every man has had a lobotomy, and their limbic system is gone. We all feel emotions. We all experience it, and so it's just like I'll put it this way: when you have access to a broad and deep set of tools when you're in combat, that's useful if those tools are relative to the combat situation. Sure. If you're limited, so if you go to a gunfight with a knife, you're limited in the tools that you have access to. If you go to a gunfight with the weapons necessary to do what you need to do to optimize your chances of quote unquote winning or at least surviving, then guess what? You've got access to a broad range. When men don't access their emotions, and all of them, they're limiting themselves in the game of life. Full stop, hands down, that's it. Done. It's exclamation mark, conversation's over. It's simple logic. It's interesting that we're using logic to tap into emotions, but we have to with men, right? Yeah. And so when we have access to those emotions, oh man, guess what? We become very empowered, especially if we can access them in a healthy way. Yeah. In a healthy way. That's important.
Yeah. And I think a lot of guys think that they're being masculine by shutting those emotions off. And I kind of like what I'm gathering from you and what I've learned in my own studies is that actually opening those up is making you more masculine, is actually exposing your masculinity.
Yeah, for sure. And some men, I've worked with men, some men that have been so shut off for so long, and then they really tap into the emotions, and they go the other way where they're incontinent. In other words, they haven't given thought and expression and attention to how they're feeling. They're like an emotional blubbering mess, almost like a female on not all females are like this, but some females that are highly emotional when they're on a certain part of their menstruation cycle. So the PMS, if they're PMS, and some men become like that because they've never tapped into their emotions for 20, 30, 40 years. And then it's just everywhere. Wow. And that's not necessarily healthy, but for a short period of time, if that's what needs to happen, there's no point in meeting that with judgment and critique. There's no point in meeting that with harsh understanding of who they are. And I'm just going to backtrack for a moment. When I used the example of a woman on a part of a menstrual cycle, very clearly, again, not all women are like that, and not all women experience the tremendous flux in emotional expression.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason some women do is obviously because their hormonal profile is very different to ours as men, and we don't experience what they do. I mean, sometimes I'm like, oof, lucky I'm not a woman.
Oh, me too.
So much strength to go through what they do in terms of what's happening in their bodies and how they respond to the world. You know, so it's just to put a caveat on that. I have tremendous respect for ladies in that sense.
Absolutely, and anybody who follows you knows that you do. But
Yeah.
absolutely, man, that's so true, and it's very challenging just to be them in general and to go through that stuff. I couldn't imagine it, man.
Glad I'm a man.
Exactly. My hat's off to them. You know. So I actually kind of want to backtrack for a second with you too. One of the things that I love that you were talking about was aggression. And a lot of people want to paint aggression as masculine, a masculine trait. Okay, I can buy into that. That's fine, because inherently we do get more aggressive than women, testosterone, all that stuff chemically. But a lot of people want to paint it in a negative light, right? But you actually have a different opinion on this, that aggression can actually be a positive trait if we can control it and center that, right?
Yes, yeah, massively. I'm a big proponent of taking any emotion and allowing it to present as something that's useful to us. Yeah. And so I think I wrote a post on this the other day, maybe it was a couple of weeks ago, a week ago, about anger around the benefit or looking at anger in a new way. And what I should do is actually bring it up. I'll find it and I'll read it. I'll read it out. Here it is. So a new way to look at anger. So I'll just read this out as it is, and then that way it's on here as well. So when we pursue what we value with tenacity, unparalleled focus, and a mindset of resilience, we learn more about ourselves, our capacity, and our power than almost any other means of self-discovery. And let's redefine aggression for a moment. Let's look at aggression as inspired relentlessness. It's a fuel source that sources our highest expression into the world. Now, raw aggression in times of absolute survival is a different concept, very different concept. Let's take the energy, essence, and momentum of this raw aggression, fight mode, and bring that into which we love, minus the harm, and protect at any cost. So we're moving out of a neurological, I'm pausing there for a moment, we're moving out of a nervous system reactive state into the essence and energy of what aggression feeds us in terms of the creative energy. Must we be aggressive all of the time in relation to our creativity and passions? No, not at all. It's simply one modality of being in the world. The issue is the essence of raw aggression is underutilized because there is an immediate association with harm. And so anytime a man is aggressive, particularly a man, it's seen as distasteful or negative. What I'm saying is another way to look at it if we can come from a healthy disposition. So it leaves an ill taste in our mouths. It's an extreme expression, generally speaking. However, if we remove the intent of survival, self-preservation, and protection at any cost, and leverage the momentum of this power for creative use, we change the world. In the past and presently, aggression is immediately associated with violence and oppression, and in most cases, that would be correct. I'm asking us to reframe and redirect. There is great freedom, evolution, and revelation in this. More importantly, we transform ourselves. So how do we channel this power? How do we transmute it into a constructive force? It comes down to three things. Know yourself. Know how you react, how you respond, your beliefs that underpin your actions, your why, your willingness to traverse difficulty. What are your values? Know all of that which you are so you can be robust in varied situations that require you to be agile and nimble in posture. Your intention, number two. Be clear on why you are choosing to act in a particular way. Get clear on how your healthy aggression will give you what you need, and enhance the lives of others. That's a key component of that, is considering the needs of others as well. And just begin with those that are important to you, that are in your immediate in-group. Number three, doing the work. You've got to go deep into you. If you don't know your edges, you have to. You must challenge yourself and know where your fault points are. Doing the work means being willing to explore the uncertainty and the discomfort that resides within you. Ultimately, the channeling of this healthy power will add another tool to your tool belt of life. That's essentially my perspective on the potential of aggression.
That is beautiful. I think every guy should actually print that out and just fucking post that on their wall, man. Read that shit every day. Because I think aggression's beautiful. And I've had a number of conversations on this, and it's a beautiful tool that we have in our toolbox when we appropriately use it, when we control it and we direct it in the
Yeah,
appropriate, direction, for
yeah,
lack of a better
yeah,
word. But
yeah,
yeah, that's exactly what you're saying. So that's really cool. And that I love that the number 3, where you're talking about how that introspection on yourself, right? So that's beautiful, man.
got to do the work, brother. We've got to do the
Yeah,
work. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. And I think they react with aggression and they don't know how to control and how to do that work with making that a positive trait.
yeah, yeah,
So I think that becomes a huge issue with relationships and stuff. So one of the other things I love that you said, and I could spend so many podcasts with you just on this stuff. But one of the things you talked about, and I love, is the importance of brotherhood. So I think a lot of guys, and especially a lot of alpha males, I know I did this when, I had a failed marriage before, my beautiful wife now, but
yeah,
essentially what happened was, when guys get angry, guys tend to go into a lone wolf mentality, right?
yeah, yeah,
And you spoke about how great it is for brotherhood, and I know how great that is, and that was for myself
yeah,
as well. And I didn't
yeah,
have that at the time here, and I look back at that, and hindsight's always 2020. I look
yeah.
back at that, and I know that was probably a big problem with what happened with me as well. So, like, just going back into that importance of trying to steer away from that, what we believe is masculine, is going into the lone wolf mentality.
Yeah. And so I'm a big proponent. I want to be really clear on something. I'm a big proponent on, as you heard me say earlier, self-reliance
Sure.
is massive. And Thoreau spoke about self-reliance extensively, an American philosopher and great mind of our time as well. So I'm a big proponent of self-reliance, and I'm not a proponent of isolation though, and isolating yourself. And I'm a proponent of being able to look at life and life's challenges on our own for a period of time, and then bringing that to the brotherhood. Man, at the moment, I feel the pinch of not having an immediate brotherhood next to me, because back in Perth, Australia, where I was living,
Mm.
I have a very strong group of men that I spend my time with every day. We'd throw down every day for a couple of hours, train hard together, sweat together, bleed together. We would do a lot together. And obviously being here now in the US, I live here, I don't have immediate access to that like back then. And so it's a process though. I'm obviously cultivating that here and I'm getting there.
Yeah.
It's just not, when you spend years with someone, man, and you develop history with men, this. And the majority of people listening knows there's something special that comes from that. And so that bond doesn't go anywhere and it doesn't leave. But just of late, like particularly today, just to be very, very, very vulnerable, for lack of a better term, or very open, transparent. I'm really feeling that pinch today because, like, I'm on my phone, I'm seeing the boys, seeing the guys train and throwing down. I'm like, oh fuck, that's really good. If I was there, I'd be hurting him, and he'd be, and or maybe he'd get me on that. Like it's that camaraderie and that the playfulness, and just I really missed that today. And I've been a little bit unwell all week, and I haven't trained. I trained today for the first time properly in like 4 days. I've been moving my body because I always do, but it hasn't been at my intensity, and so. There's a few things that have compounded, and I'm feeling a little bit, I don't want to say I'm lonely. I'm just feeling a little bit disconnected, even though I have my beautiful fiance here and I've my work that I'm deeply passionate about and so forth. I'm feeling a little bit isolated today. And so I really understand the importance of that on so many levels. And so, back to your question around that brotherhood, we need good men around us. We need good men around us. I'm also blessed because I run men's programs. And so virtually I'm able to connect with men in an epic way, every day, basically. But that's still not enough. We have to have the physical contact. We're very visceral beings, very physical beings. And so we need that physical contact with men. And so I'm blessed, there's a couple of guys here that I am able to connect with, and I'm building that tribe here now as well. But, it's that lone wolf mentality where it's an unhealthy lone wolf, where I'm better than anyone else. I'm the best. I don't need anyone. I can do this on my own. No, you can't, because hermits don't really live healthy lives. We're not built that way. We're pro-social beings. We've evolved in groups. We've evolved in tribe.
Yeah.
That doesn't take away from being self-reliant or even spending time on your own. I advocate for various and multiple rites of passage on your own during your lifetime as a man, particularly, and women will go through their own.
Mm-hmm.
But as men specifically and particularly, get out there, jump in, do medicine journeys, get on your own, you spend time in nature, challenge yourself in your own way, do things where you can grow on your own, and bring that wisdom and that knowledge back to a group that aligns with your highest values. It's very important.
I love that, man. And I just fully support that. I just feel like a lot of guys, I've had some guys reach out to me and they're just like, man, I'm in a bad place. And they're reaching out to me, a guy they don't really know, but they listen to a podcast and they're saying, hey, man, just wanted to let you know I've kind of been in a dark place recently. And, I sit there and try to support them. But obviously without that tight group that in close proximity, it's hard to give them what they need. Right. And so it's so important to build that tribe close to you. And I love that you put it that way.
Unless, of course, brother, they've done the work, unless they've done the work and they've got to a point where, again, I wouldn't advocate for lengthened periods of time, but if they've done the work, they can support themselves for longer periods of time without being in a brotherhood or without being in a physical contact of tribe. Because they know themselves and they've got healthy tools, psycho-emotional tools to access to help them cope and deal with difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
But that only gets you so far. At the same time, simultaneously develop a tribe around you. Know what your values are, know what your interests are, and just go hang with men that share similar interests as a starting point. And you may not always hit the mark on the head, but eventually you will. And you'll spend time with quality people.
A broken clock's right twice a day, right?
I like that.
Well, that's good, man. I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about stress. And I think stress is something like us men, we look at that as a negative term. I know I do. If I say stress, I feel like I'm being weak, right? And I think a lot of men feel that way.
Yeah.
And I don't love it. Like if I say stress or anxiety, I feel like I'm weak. Like I do not like those terms. So like, I know you have a great perspective on this. So I just want to hear a little bit about that, 'cause I think it's going to really help men. Absolutely.
Yeah. So for me, stress and anxiety is men really internalize stress and anxiety so much.
Mm-hmm.
Internalize stress and anxiety so much. And we have to speak to stress and anxiety, and we have to call a spade a spade. It's as simple as that. That's really the reality of it is, man. So, hey, I'm stressed. Yep, I'm overwhelmed. That's it. That's the fucking truth of it. I'm overwhelmed. I've got a lot on at the moment. I'm placing even pressure on myself that is self-imposed, and I've got external pressures, and I'm stressed at the moment. And you know what? I'm going to take that stress and I'm going to go hit the bags for a bit, or I'm going to go for a run, or I'm going to do some writing, or I'm going to do something constructive, or I'm going to talk to someone about it, or I'm going to make some actual changes in my life that give me less stress so that I'm not under so much physical stress. Instead of working 4 jobs, I know it's giving me more money, but I'm just going to cut down to 3 jobs because I'm not really even happy in that one. And so I'm fucking that off. I'm done with it. And so whatever decisions we make, by acknowledging that we're stressed and we're feeling anxiety and we're feeling anxiousness is the first starting point. And then taking action on that and speaking to it, man, giving it some verbiage, giving it some language, and not holding it in within ourselves and pretending everything's okay. I spend so much of my life, and even now, like, I often don't feel stressed. But I know when I look at my life, my body, like, I would never say, oh, no, I'm not stressed. I'm not stressed. Oh, no, I'm cool. I'm good. I'm fine. I'm not stressed. But it's really, we don't want to say that we're stressed because we're scared.
Yeah.
And what we use the word stress, and essentially we don't use the word stress when we should use it more. But what we really need to use is the word fear. We're fear of being seen. We're fearful of being seen that we're not capable enough. We're not adequate enough. We're not robust enough. We're not able enough as men. And that's what we're essentially fearful of. And so that builds more stress in how are others going to see our capability and utility in the world. Now, I'm generalizing to some extent, of course.
Sure.
But a large amount of the time, we come from that place. And so when we own stress, when we make it conscious, it becomes malleable. We can do something with it. When it's unconscious, we can't play with it. We can't do anything with it. And therefore, we can't shift it, transform it, change it. And so brothers out there that are listening to this, if you're stressed, own it. It's okay to be stressed. We live in a world where we're overstimulated. We live in a world where there's so much demand placed on every human being, and men in their own way. And so it's okay to say that you're stressed. Don't buy into the continuous story of that where you play a victim to the tune of stress. Acknowledge that you're stressed, Do something about it. Be with it for a while if you want. Have a healthy outlet for it. Movement is one. Breath, sound, movement. Sing, scream, primal scream. Go hit some bags with whilst you're thinking about everything that's stressing you, because you're making a neural connection and a visceral connection as well. Giving you some actual tips here to move through the stress. And then look at what's underpinning the stress. Why are you taking on so much? Or why is so much being given to you? Or if it's not a volume thing, it's an intensity thing. Why are you choosing to engage in so much intense distraction? What are you avoiding? What are you scared of? Asking those questions is really confronting. So do it in a support group or with a counselor or a psychologist or a mentor or a guide or whatever it is. But get to the root of all of this, because when you do, you liberate yourself. And let's go back full circle for a moment. At the beginning of our conversation, when we talk about freedom, every man wants freedom. You want to be free? Get fucking real with yourself. Be truthful, speak the truth, be real. That's the art of being a man.
Oh, that's a fucking mic drop right there. We're just hanging up right now because I don't know if you get much better than that, dude. That was so good. Calling us all out, calling me out on that too, man. I love it.
I'm calling myself out, brother.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful.
Me all day.
Absolutely, man. I love that. So we're getting towards the end of our time, man. And I really want to thank you for coming on here. I have 2 last questions for you. Yeah. The first one is, what are you up to and how can we support you?
Oh man, amazing question. Thank you, brother. I'm up to so much right now. So much. So I've got a journey called Reclaim Your Kingdom. And that's an immersive online journey for men. And I've developed essentially, so I don't know where I'll explain it in this way. It's a 2-month journey. There's 8 pillars of masculinity. It's an epic construct and understanding of what it means to be a man in contemporary times. That 2-month journey leads into a 4-month deep dive exploration that has 12 principles, more advanced principles of masculinity. All of this, there's live webinars every week that I'm a part of, that I run. There's rich learning material. There's a private Facebook group. I really focus on helping men be healthier, more connected, more vibrant, more free men in today's world. So I'm really working on that, working on amazing things with my fiance, Christine, as well, in the realm of masculinity and femininity too, really supporting her in what she's doing and vice versa. She's very much supporting me. I work with men and women in a one-on-one capacity, and there's some amazing things that are coming out towards the end of this year and next year as well, specifically helping women too. But the men's stuff that I'm working on is really evolving massively. And so it's a primary focus for me at the moment.
I love that. And we're going to have your links when we post this all out and stuff like that.
Thanks,
to
man.
make sure everybody follows you. So, and what's your handle on IG too, that we can get people?
Yeah. Stefanos, Sifandos on IG and Facebook. And I'm super active on those places.
Yes, he is, man. He's always on there doing some lives and stuff. I actually caught your live last night and that was a lot of fun.
Cool. Thank you.
So that's good stuff. Well, that's awesome, man. And I'm definitely going to be pushing people to follow you because that's some beautiful stuff that you got going on, especially with the pillars of masculinity. I love that, man.
Thank you, brother.
The last thing I have for you is, what's your last in one, if you could give all men out there one final tip, what is it that you would give them?
Be willing to venture into the unknown. Just go back to a full circle moment of what we spoke about at the beginning. Be willing to venture into the unknown, into the internal unknown. Be willing to go there, because I promise you, if you go there, it's probably going to be really painful. And I promise you, if you stay with it long enough, you'll break through the pain, you'll equilibrate it, the fear and the pain will dissipate, and you really, truly will be free. And that's freedom, is when we look at all the aspects of who we are. That's where we become whole, and wholeness equates to freedom. Be willing to go there.
I love that. As you guys heard, that is the last note from Steph. I love that right there. Well, thanks, brother. I appreciate you so much. So much gratitude towards you for giving us your time and supporting my community by dropping some knowledge bombs. We're definitely going to have to get you back on here because I know we just hit the surface of your knowledge. So absolutely. Well, thank you, brother. And I respect you, and we will talk soon, man.
Thanks, man.
All right.